So I'm just an idiotic, stupid dog, but this story was a little bit, I don't even know what you would say. It was, the man had come home from a softball game. He plays in a beer league. It's like for the over 50 crowd beer league. And they what they do is they play softball, slow pitch, and then one team usually wallops the other, and after so long, they just break it off and they go drink a lot of beers in the parking lot. It's a good time. The man really enjoys it, but he usually comes home kind of pumped up and kind of happy. Sometimes, very rarely, they win. He plays for the Grays. I always thought that was a really cool name for a softball team, and I assumed it was about being a gray squirrel, so I particularly was, you know what I'm saying, because I'm just such a squirrel dog. But it turns out they were named after a now defunct funeral parlor. The funeral parlor went out of business about 10 years ago, and they've been playing in the same ratty mothball shirts ever since. The same ratty mothball stained up, they need darning. Their uniforms are old. Because the guy, when he died, he left, what do you call it, where they whatever, escrow it out so that they could get the fee paid to be in the league, but they didn't have no money for no uniforms ever. So they're playing in 10-year-old moth-bitten, ratty uniforms. But he normally enjoys it. Normally they get their asses whipped, but he always comes home. He says, I caught a ball. I made a hit. I struck out 3 times, but I got a foul tip. I caught a foul tip over by third base line. I wasn't in the game when I caught it. I was sitting on the bench, but I stood up. I caught a foul tip. It was really amazing. He's usually pretty happy, even though they get their asses whooped every time. But whatever. This time he came home, he was all dejected. He said, for God's sakes, we were going to win the game. We were finally going to beat the vaunted, or whatever you call them, the best team in the league, the dominant team year after year after year is McLean's Trucking. They've got these brand new red uniforms with black lettering with gold trim. It says McLean Trucking. They got white, soft baseball pants, softball pants with stripes down the side. They got brand new hats every year. They get a new uniform issued every year, and every other year they get a new warm-up jacket. It's really an amazing squad. The man came home, he said, we were just about to beat him, and the coach put his one-eyed brother in the outfield. He's got no depth perception. They kept hitting the ball out there. He's running back and forth, smacking in the fence, running up into, shallow center field. The ball's bouncing all over. We finally had somebody trade out with him, and they hit it over where he was in left field then. Jeepers creepers. We're up by 10 runs with an inning to go. The coach puts his one-eyed brother out in the outfield with no depth perception, and of course we lose the game. But that wasn't the worst part. The man, he said the worst part was we're sitting around drinking our beers after the game, and everybody I notice is drinking Miller Lite, which I like Miller Lite. It's a good tasting light beer, but it don't have no alcohol in it, It's like 4%, 4.2. So I go to my trunk, I break out a 12-pack of Bud Light premium bottles. So all of a sudden, I became the red-headed stepchild of the gathering. And all of a sudden, I became I don't think you call it a piranha, a panona, I forget what they call it, but persona non grata. I was the guy no one wanted to stand around. Nobody wanted to be close to. And finally, I said, hey, does anybody want a real beer? And they're like, you got that Bud Light bullshit? Nah, man, ever since they did the transgender, ever since they started that transgender bullshit, you can keep that, Bud Blue away from me, that light blue colored light beer from Budweiser. Everybody was standing around, all the guys from a clean truck, and started almost like spitting their tobacco juice towards my Bud Light. I was like, geez, I had to put it back in the trunk. I was embarrassed. I didn't even, I'd heard faintly about the transgender thing. Evidently, the dog knows all about the transgender thing, but I was like, I don't really keep up with that kind of crap. So I didn't know everybody was so mad at Bud Light for getting involved with a transgender influencer. So everybody was I felt like demeaned. I felt like it was really, I felt embarrassed. I finally went over and I got a Bud Light can, and I got a Miller Lite, and I drank about half of it, and I said, I got to get going finally, and I came home in my Ford Festiva. And in my garage, I drank a couple of my Bud Light Platinums so no one could see me. But, you want to drink a 6% alcohol, not a 4.2. You got to drink, 3 of these things versus 2 of the others. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any, I'm talking about there. Plus, it's bottle. Bottle's better than can. Come on, And I looked at the man. I was like, you shouldn't let that kind of crap bother you, man, And I'll tell you something else, man. He's like, what, dog? I said to him, I said, you know who's on the side of the transgender social influencer? And the man said, well, I know for sure Kid Rock is. And Kid Rock's got a big video with his pipe cleaner arm shooting all the Budweiser cans off a fence, off a split rail fence, to have a political protest that way. And I said, yeah, I know. But guess who is on the side of Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, and saying you got to get off the back of Bud Light and the transgender influencer, and is on the side of, you will not guess. I was like, don't keep me with bated breath, dog. Who is he? He goes, none other than Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump Jr. on his podcast. So what does that mean? I mean, that must really wig out all the people who are, diehard Donald Trump sycophants that his oldest son is sticking up for a social influencer. And all of a sudden, the man's like, holy crap, Don Jr. is sticking up for a transvestial pro whatever thing going on there, whatever you say, a transgender social influencer, Don Jr., is sticking up for, as the world stops spinning in its axis. I mean, come on. And I was, the man, he was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to say, And I wonder if Don Jr. and like Kid Rock are going to have one of them boxing matches like Jake Paul will have with a little skinny rap artist or something. You know what I'm saying? I wonder if they're going to have one of those 3-round boxing contests that look like two wet cats swatting at a half a filled up water balloon. I have no idea. But I will say this, as a dog, it kind of impressed me. I never had too much to get impressed over Don Jr. about. But Don Jr. ain't afraid of whatever you would say. The one thing I'll say this about Don Jr., he ain't afraid of whatever you say, like just like Bud Light. All of a sudden, all the Bud Light enthusiasts, they're throwing their Bud Light in the ocean. It's like a Boston Tea Party for Bud Light. And Don Jr.'s not afraid to stick his snout in that crap. Who knows how many Twitter followers or whatever, Instagram followers or whatever you would say, how many followers Don Jr. is going to lose. I mean, Don made a decision, and it wasn't what do you call one of those career decisions or one of those professional decisions. It wasn't a business decision. I didn't know Don Jr. was capable of making, whatever you would say, an integrity-based decision and sticking up for, you know what I'm saying, the underdog. Who knew? I mean, God bless us all. God bless us all. Who knew?